here is my audience for my sepsis speech. Say hi to the camera, guys. Wave.
Hello.
There's my family. Okay, I am going to talk to you guys today about sepsis. I'm sure you guys have all heard of a heart attack or cancer or a stroke or addiction. And I'm sure you all have known somebody that has been touched by one or more of those things. But have you all heard of sepsis? I'm guessing you probably haven't. Sepsis is labeled a silent killer, and according to the Mayo Clinic, over 1 million people each year are affected by sepsis, and 28 to 50% of those people die, which is a huge, huge number. That is more than cancer, and more than heart disease, and more than AIDS combined. And so there are 3 levels of sepsis. There is sepsis, severe sepsis, and septic shock. And so I'm going to go over each of those a little bit and briefly just kind of touch on those. Why is it so deadly? Because it's so hard to find and so hard to, we don't catch it until generally the patient is in septic shock. In severe sepsis. So according to the Mayo Clinic, some signs and symptoms are, for sepsis, the signs and symptoms are lower blood pressure, which would be a blood pressure below 100 systolic, and then a high respiration rate, which would be a respiration rate of above 20, and a fever of 101 or greater. And then on top of those, they need to have 2 or more of those symptoms, and plus a source of infection. And so that source of infection can be anything from a small cut on your finger to pneumonia to a urinary tract infection or something of your organs. So then we move on to severe sepsis, and severe sepsis is the same symptoms, except for now the blood pressure is 90 systolic or lower. And when we get to severe sepsis, that is where the organs are beginning to be involved. And there's also, now there's an increased mental status changes, and there's also difficulty breathing, are some more of the signs. At our hospital, we call a sepsis alert off of the 2 vital signs, which would be increased respiratory rate, fever, and low blood pressure. And so again, that respiratory rate is over 20. The blood pressure is below 90 systolic, and then the fever is greater than 101. Plus, they must have a source. And then after that, we move on to septic shock, and that is where the body can no longer maintain a blood pressure, so your blood pressure is going to get even lower, and then it's no longer responding to fluids, and you're going to go into organ failure, and then the patient dies. The reason that it is so sneaky is because some people will get a small cut, and you don't think sepsis with that small cut. You don't think that as being the source of infection, and sometimes that blood pressure can just drop from, let's say, 110 over 70 to 108 over 68. So just a small blood pressure drop can be the beginning signs of sepsis. But when it's that small, you don't think of that. And so we need to really get aggressive in thinking sepsis and treating sepsis. And so how do you treat sepsis? You start with a broad spectrum antibiotics and fluid resuscitation. At our hospital, we treat sepsis with, like I said, the fluid resuscitation. So we want a door to antibiotic time within 30 minutes of getting those antibiotics hung. And then we're going to draw blood cultures and do a bunch of blood work and a bunch more tests, and then we can narrow that spectrum down. But the main thing with sepsis is if you have an infection and there's a level of consciousness change, think sepsis. And think if the person gets increased confusion, think sepsis. And then, again, how do we treat this? We treat this, again, by antibiotics and by broad spectrum antibiotics and fluids. And then the other thing, spread the word. That's how we treat it. Spread the word. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed my speech. And here's my audience. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.